So we are jumping in to the very first idea, the very first schema. And I'm using the word schema to mean kind of an outline, kind of a structure to put everything else we learned this year on. So the very first schema we're learning about is organ systems, kind of the history of some basic organization of the body. So I encourage you to take notes during these videos. I think that this is going to be the bulk of the note taking actually is going to be during these YouTube videos. So I'm going to have you do this once every unit is going to be writing down the learning objective, which is always on the bottom of the page also, but it's right here. So I'd encourage you guys to write this down. The structure, there's going to be a video and a lesson for every decimal. So 1.1 will have a video and a lesson. 1.2 will have a video and a lesson. Again, the video will be most of the note taking. I'd encourage you to do this actually on free notebook paper so that you can put it right in front of the unit packet, which we are going to get next class. And the unit packet will look like this. And I'll teach you guys what I mean by all of this. We'll get a unit packet on when we're doing what and what we're covering. So that will become in a big unit packet staple that you put in a binder. And so on top of that, I'd love for you guys to do kind of a free notebook paper. I think that's the best way. So let's jump in. So a big question, and I would write down this outline too. Another idea would be to write down this outline first, and so as you go through, you're making sense of 1, 2, and 3, the big ideas. We're going to talk about how your body's organized from small to big. We're going to talk about the 11 different organ systems of the human body, and we're going to talk about some paradigm shifts, some shifts in worldview and medicine on what the most important thing of the body is. So first off, some key questions. What is the organizing principle of anatomy? So we might ask, what causes our malady? Anatomy is, in a sense, the study of medicine of the human body, of function and dysfunction. So what causes us to be screwed up? Mal meaning bad, prefix meaning bad. So malady. Where do disease and dysfunction come from? Is a big question that we've differed over time and how we answer that. And what makes your body work properly? What gives it balance? And we'll go through 3 big paradigm shifts towards the end of the lesson. The first thing, though, before we get going on what we currently think about all of this, about the current ways that we function and dysfunction, the main organizing principle, before we get there, we have to talk about some structure. So your body's structured from small to big. A big theme in science is scale. So talking about from a proton, neutron, electron, maybe even some smaller stuff inside those, all the way up to the universe. There's a big difference in scale. So there's a similar difference in scale here where you have atoms and chemicals. So we talk about this as chemicals. All the way up, you build those together. Hundreds of thousands of chemicals in this really complex city builds a cell. So chemicals goes to cells. Similar cell types builds a tissue. Similar tissues build an organ. Similar organs build an organ system. And all of your organ systems, all 11 of them, build the organism. So let me show that. Let me show a better picture of it. Actually, with all of those kind of filled in already, so you can kind of get a snapshot of that. This is something I would take notes on. So those 6 things, those 6 levels of organization is kind of like building from small to big. So you might go over this again and say, okay, chemicals to cells, to tissues, to organs, to organ systems, to organism. And you might have a really hard time memorizing that. But I think an easy way for memory for me oftentimes is using letters. So I do C, C, T, O, O, O. Chemicals, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organism. And so that acronym for me is a really easy way to remember kind of the buildup of those from small to big. So of these, I would say what we study the most this year in anatomy will be organ systems. We're going to go through those 11 organ systems. So if you say, what's the basic principle of anatomy? What's the organizing principle of all of anatomy? We could say organ systems are. Last year, when I did Cornell notes, I had my students last year take Cornell notes on this section. That was just me winging it. So that was me taking Cornell notes on this section last year, taking a few notes on each of these from the book. On the side, I said, okay, how can I remember this? And those letters just stood out to me as CCT-OOO. Not incredibly creative, but I think a helpful way to remember. Okay, so organ systems. We're looking at organ systems. I'm curious what you guys already know about organ systems. So I'm going to challenge you to pause the video here and see if you can name the organ system that each of these pictures might belong to. Let me give you a clue on this one. This is about the hormones that are released that might cause you to be a dwarf or might cause you to be a giant. The hormones released by certain glands are kind of its own organ system. So pause the video. One you might know, you might think of the heart or blood with this one. This is actually a dissected human cadaver, but you leave all of the blood vessels and all of the little capillaries dissected out, and this is how many blood vessels there are. So this is the cardiovascular system with your vessels and your heart and your blood all in one, cardiovascular. This is your nervous system with your brain, your spinal cord, all of the nerves that go out. My wife's a nurse, and when she was in high school, she didn't really think of nerves in your body really as solid things, but your nerves really are solid things. Number one is the integumentary system, and this is your skin. If you see epidermis, dermis, you've probably seen that before. And that's your integumentary system. This is your skeletal system, all the bones. You see this artistry by Vesalius, the famous artist. And the many, many cells that are involved in building and breaking up your bone tissue. All of that's involved in the skeletal system, including your joints. And this is the endocrine system, which involves glands and hormones. So here's 5 of the organ systems that we're going to learn about. There's some here. I think even a better picture to look at it would be off to the side here. So feel free, and as I talk about it, pause the video, write down what notes you need to. So the first one we talked about was integumentary system. This one really just involves the structure. So I'll talk briefly about the structure and function. So what notes do I want to take? Just take a few brief notes about the structure of each organ system and the function of each organ system. I don't ask you to memorize all of this, but to have a general impression that you could write about it and do some matching on a test. So the first one's integumentary system. That's your skin. It protects you from the outside, protects you from bacteria and infection. It even helps you synthesize vitamin D, which is really important. We'll talk about that later this year. It's a huge receptor organ. So how do you sense the world? Your skin isn't just to protect you, it's to sense the world. Also help to cool you off with sweat glands, keep things moisturized with oil glands. Second, your skeletal system. We talked earlier about the bones, also includes joints, ligaments, cartilage, and the cells within. That's your skeletal system. It protects you, supports you. It also stores things like fat and minerals. Blood is made inside your bones, which is crazy. All of the blood in your body is actually made inside your bones. That's a function of the skeletal system, is the creation of blood. Next is the muscular system, and we'll spend a lot of time this year, Q2 especially, going over the muscles. This helps you manipulate your environment, helps you move around. It also helps you make facial expression, communicate. So communication, manipulation of muscles. Maybe another one, that's a little confusing. Maybe another one that's easier to see is that it produces heat. One way when you get cold, you shiver, right? And that's actually a mechanism your body uses to maintain its heat. So that's a huge function of the muscular system. Most of the heat comes from your muscles. Fourth, your nervous system. Your nervous system involves all your brain, spinal cord, and nerves. This is the control system of your body. Some of you might think of the brain as the most important organ of your body, and I hope to dispel you of that notion this year. But it's the fast-acting control system. Your endocrine system is your slow-acting control system. You might think of a teenager making a conscious decision to do something, might be making a decision, might be making their brain might be involved in breathing or their heart rate, but you're also ruled by your hormones. You're also guided and directed and bossed around by your hormones a little bit. So that's the slow-acting control system is your endocrine system, all of the glands like your pituitary gland, thyroid gland, even your lungs and your heart act like glands too. Lots and lots of different glands, your testes and ovaries. So that's the slow-acting control system. Your nerves are the fast-acting control system because hormones do a lot. So they do control you. They just do it more slowly and for longer. Sixth, your cardiovascular system involves your blood, involves getting oxygen to all of your cells in your body. It also transports waste all to your kidney, which filters your blood. So in your cardiovascular system, you have your heart, your arteries, your veins, your blood, and that is a huge transport system for nutrition. So it's basically like a truck. Your blood is like a truck. Blood's one of the most important things. Next, we talk about these other 6. So see if you can see these. So 7th is your lymphatic system. This is one of the weirdest ones. Endocrine system, the glands and hormones is an odd system. Lymphatic is also an odd system. It picks up fluid that's leaked from your blood vessels. It disposes of debris in your lymphatic system. It holds white blood cells and helps combat infection. So it's hugely involved in immunity. Your immune system is equal to your lymphatic system, and I would write that down. Eighth, your respiratory system, respire. You inspire and expire. That's your lungs, your larynx, your trachea, all of this here. It keeps blood supplied with oxygen. It takes things out of your blood like CO2, carbon dioxide, and it gets it out of your body. So your blood pH can be maintained. The acidity and base level in your blood can be the same all the time. So that's your respiratory system. Ninth, we are on the digestive system. This is where you get all of your nutrition. Basically, food gets broken down into those chemicals. So you go from macro, Big Mac. The goal of your digestive system is to break it down back into that lowest level of organization, the chemicals. So they can actually be sucked through your digestive wall into your blood. That's the goal of your digestive system. It also eliminates waste as feces. 10th, your urinary system eliminates waste, eliminates nitrogenous containing waste. It maintains everything. So your kidney is the hub of your urinary system. You might think of your urethra where you pee out as an important part of that. That's just the end. That's just the end game. Your kidney is really where the action happens. It is the filter of all your blood, so it filters things back into your blood. It takes waste and extra stuff out. So it maintains the balance of a lot of different things in your blood. So kidney is awesome. Lastly, 11th, and I'm going to tie these two together into one system, is your reproductive system. Your reproductive system, of course, makes babies, but it also releases a lot of hormones. So your testes and ovaries release a ton of hormones. So in that sense, your testes and ovaries are part of the endocrine system. Your testes and ovaries are also part of your reproductive system. So they're part of two different systems. And that's mainly involved in making babies and feeding babies like breasts. So last night what I did is I took each of the first letters of these organ systems and I just wrote them down out in a line. And I said, all right, how am I going to remember this the most? And this is a little bit like a game, like a word game. You take the vowels, and there's usually fewer vowels than consonants. And I rearranged them into the way I felt like I would remember it the best. And I came up with mine curdles, just like milk curdles. Have you ever had milk curdle or had it curdle in your stomach? I did a milk challenge in high school. You guys have ever seen the milk challenge where you drink a gallon of milk in an hour? And I did it. I was actually one of the few guys to do it. But it felt like the milk was curdling in my stomach. At least it felt that way. My stomach, it felt like my stomach was churning. You could almost feel the milk curdling. You actually spell that differently, C-U-R-D-L. So curdle is spelled differently. But this is close enough, and I'll remember this one. So mine curdles is a way for me to remember the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 organ systems. So I challenge you to pause the video. And try and name each of the organ systems based on this acronym. And I also challenge you to try and come up with a better acronym than me, because I'm just winging this. This isn't something that I learned in college or something. So muscular, integumentary, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, urinary, respiratory, reproductive, doesn't matter which order, digestive, lymphatic, and lastly, skeletal. So I hope that's an easy way. Again, the main thrust of this first chapter is just that you can name them all, that you know that there are 11 organ systems, you can name them all, but I want you to know some basic structures and functions of each one. So that's the main takeaway. We'll go into each of these organ systems later this year, and that's the fun part of this course. Okay, next. So what I would do is, in class, we'll do this more directly, but I think that if you want to now, if you have time now to create some note cards on each one, you can even split each note card up in thirds and do 4 note cards. I think that would be an effective way to remember this and quiz yourself on it. I'll give you some clues in class on how to create effective note cards. So again, you can pause the video, challenge yourself here to see which of these organ systems you know. and you might need a little help because you've never seen this before. So A is muscular, B is skeletal, C is nervous, D, those are a bunch of glands that release hormones, so that must be endocrine. E, that looks like cardiovascular, has the heart and the vessels. F is your skin, so integumentary. G, they always show the lymphatic system, the immune system, in green, so I know that green usually means lymphatic. H is respiratory, the lungs. I is digestive. J and K are reproductive. So those are the organ systems. That's where we currently understand the key organizing principle of anatomy and physiology of medicine. What causes our malady? Well, I have a heart issue. I have a hole in my heart. I have a perforated septum in my heart. I have a defect in the way my brain neurons fire. So it's part of my nervous system. The heart was part of my cardiovascular system. So I have a cardiologist, I have a neurologist, I have an endocrinologist. So the way we understand the organizing principle of anatomy now is usually through organ systems. That's the unifying principle. But how did we once used to, as a group of people, as humans, used to think of these questions? How do we used to answer them? So now I want to go through some historical paradigms, some historical background. And what I mean by paradigm, I mean a set of beliefs that is assumed. That's usually what I mean by paradigm or worldview. It's an assumed set of beliefs. So the historical paradigm was what Hippocrates started, and that paradigm followed after him, and people after him kind of assumed his basic ideas, his basic philosophy. I think this is kind of crucial to understand. We have a paradigm of the organ system that might someday be overthrown. So these are the three guys we're going to talk about: is Hippocrates, Galen, and William Harvey. Three big shifts, paradigm shifts, revolutions in science. We're going to cover these, and that's it for this lesson. So first of all, Hippocrates was Greek. He is oftentimes called the father of medicine. A lot of works are attributed to him that he probably didn't write. History is funny in this way. He's probably most famous for writing the Hippocratic Oath. We're going to cover that in class, do an activity with the Hippocratic Oath, old versus new. Interesting what they've left out of the new one and what he had in the old one. So we're going to look at the Hippocratic Oath. His big shift from before him, before Hippocrates, let me see if I have this on the slide. Before Hippocrates, the reigning paradigm of disease and dysfunction was a supernatural cause, a god, lowercase g, a Greek god caused my malady, caused my disease. So his paradigm shift was to go from supernatural to natural. I would write that down. His paradigm shift was Hippocrates said, no, there are natural causes. It is thus with regard divine nor more sacred than other diseases, but has a natural cause from the originates like other affections. Men regard its nature and cause as divine from ignorance and wonder. So he's basically, shots fired moment here. He says, if you believe that your disease was caused by the gods, you're ignorant. You're an ignoramus. There must be a natural cause for this disease. So supernatural to natural was a huge paradigm shift for Hippocrates. During class, I hope to maybe talk about, is that possible for God to cause something and for something to be caused by a natural chemical reason, a physical cause also. So some differences in paradigms throughout time and how we view that question on what cause, how things get caused. Notably, Hippocrates also thought, so he says, yes, supernatural and natural, but there's also some things about balance and imbalance. So he says you're sick if you have an imbalance in any one of these four main elements: phlegm, blood, yellow bile, black bile. I would just list those off in your notes. Phlegm, blood, yellow bile, black bile were these four primary elements. Has kind of a airbender feel to it. There's these four primary elements that we don't recognize today, but that's what was recognized universally at the time. And that will continue to be recognized for a long time afterwards. So here's the four primary elements. If you have an imbalance of black bile, then you'll be depressed. So how do I treat you as your physician? I need to get your black bile back into balance. So he had some funny views, but so were his times. And you can read this quote, you can pause it and read this quote. But he's basically saying that you are unhealthy, you will be in pain whenever there's an imbalance in this balance beam between those four elements. So pause the video here also. Can you name who is this, where was he born, During what time was he alive? What was his big paradigm shift, and what things in medicine did he feel like caused disease and pain? Okay, so we just talked about Hippocrates, talked about supernatural and natural, talked about the four main elements. Now we're going to move on to Galen, who is later, who's in 129 to 200 AD. He's also Greek, but he, of course, was in the Roman Empire. This is post-Christ. Rome was the all roads lead to Rome. This is this massive empire. So he's a Roman citizen, but he's Greek, ethnically Greek. And he was influential for a long period of time, for 1,300 years. So if you can add that to it, this is almost the 16th century and how long he is influential. Galen also believed that there were four humors, that there were four primary humors that you need balance in. But now Galen takes the important step of saying, okay, you have a natural cause and those imbalances are in the organs. So his shift, his paradigm shift was from body as a whole with these four elements to organs in particular with these elements. And he viewed that there were three spirits: the animal spirit in your brain, the vital spirit in your left ventricle, which actually isn't that far off. Your left ventricle is really important. We'll talk more about that later. And your natural spirit in your liver. So there's these three also hugely influential spirits. That's not the most important slide I'm going to show you, but also interesting at this time. He was amazing. He was probably also really well known. Besides just saying, hey, the imbalances are in your organs, he also was an important dissector. He had these open air dissections where people would come and watch. He was a great observer. So he's, in a sense, a great scientist because he would observe things. He would close off your ureters to show the function of kidneys. He would do different experiments with animals to show the function of those organ systems. So he's a great observer. And he's trying to show, he doesn't know organ systems yet. He doesn't know that word. He's just saying, this is the function of this part of the body. So the idea of organs comes up with him. So pause the video, see if you can quiz yourself with Galen. So now we've talked about Hippocrates, and we've also talked about Galen, both of them believing that there were four primary elements. Hippocrates saying that, no, it's natural causes. Galen saying, no, it's in the organs themselves. And now we arrive at the very last guy, kind of the beginning of the end, the beginning of the modern paradigm of organ systems. This guy's name is William Harvey. Now, William Harvey wasn't someone we would consider to be a great scientist. He wasn't a super careful, precise scientist, but he was an important thinker. He importantly was the first one to really prove that there was a circulatory system, that the blood in your body wasn't just used up and gone and your body makes more. The blood in your body circulates in a circle. There's a big circle and a small circle. A big circle to all your body and kind of a small circle as the blood gets pumped to your lungs. This picture actually shows that a little bit, that this blue stuff here kind of shows deoxygenated blood that goes into the right side of your heart, and this red stuff that goes into the left side of your heart that is oxygenated once it comes back from the lungs. It comes back and is oxygenated. He showed through experiment and observation that there was too much blood being pumped out of your heart to be replenished by your body, so it must have to recycle. So he proved that there was a circulatory system. He had some funny notions. He still believed that the heart was kind of at the center of your whole being. It was kind of magical, but he at least proved that there's many parts of your body that work together in a system. So his paradigm shift is saying, no, it's not just organs, it's organ systems, it's your body working together. So that's his paradigm shift. And I almost forgot to mention, William Harvey also was the first one to really propose that eggs and sperm are what fertilize to make babies. The microscope was invented later, so he couldn't prove this, but he was kind of a front runner of that theory that we currently accept. So I challenge you to pause this video and go through this list of questions. So we talked about these three guys. That is the end, really, of this lesson. We've talked about organization from small to big. We've talked about the 11 organ systems, and we've talked about some of the paradigm shifts in what is the most important part of your body. So what we're doing the rest of the year really is delving into each of these organ systems. I think it's really neat. I've learned quite a bit teaching it. Again, in class, we'll go over what maybe some note cards would look like to help you remember this stuff. You've heard it, but now how do you remember it? That's why we're doing the video, so you have more time in class to do the study kind of stuff, the critical thinking, the discussion, the writing. So I'll see you guys in class.